Okay, so the noise reduction is almost done, and we'll see it drop down and just kind of disappear, and it'll look more like there's nothing there. And you can see that the little bits and pieces that kind of went above that are still there and a little more pronounced. Now, that doesn't mean that we still can't take them out. There's just no sense in taking out anything that wasn't just the initial background fuzz, as I like to call it. So I also realized that I had my secondary monitor still turned on, which was probably a little awkward, but that's okay. Still learning the ins and outs of all of this. So now we're going to go ahead and export this file. We're just going to save it as rem again. We're going to make sure that we put it into the right folder. We're not going to do any metadata on this. You can add metadata to stuff, and it can be fairly important. I just don't. I'm just lazy. There's not necessarily an easy way to do it in Reaper. So I just don't. So maybe that affects my overall search engine optimization, my SEO. I don't know for sure. Honestly, a lot of times the tags for the episode kind of take care of that. Oh, goodness. So we'll just wait for this to render out. More waiting. Always waiting. Turn the music back up a little bit. This one is called Lonely Desert with no drums. And then they'll play the next one has the drums, I assume. And people sometimes wonder why it takes me so long to get these out. And sometimes it's just because work and stuff gets in the way. If Brandon decides that he can't do it on Wednesday and I have to do like Thursday evening or something, it can take me a few days to get it done. But honestly, waiting on my slow-ass computer tends to be the worst of it all. So now that has all rendered out, I'll go ahead and close this. We're not going to save the changes in this. No need to. And we will open up podcast 140 Reaper file, RPP. And it's going to bring Brandon back in, and we're going to insert a media file, just like we did in the get-go. We are going to select the REM wave, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this old one, because disk management. The edited copy of the if I need to rebuild it, which is usually not something that happens, I can just bring back the raw audio file and pull it out again. Not a big deal. So we'll go ahead and open this one back up. Where did it put it? It put it right on the end, put it right over top of his. Not exactly what I was wanting to do. What I should have done, let's go ahead and undo that. So what I should have done is created a new track, insert media file, and then REM, and that'll put it there. So now we have this. I always like to put myself on top because I'm better than Brandon. Don't tell him that I said that. I'm sure he won't watch this in its entirety. So now I'm going to hit the home button. That'll take my little my little scrubby cursor here all the way back to the beginning, and I'm going to do some automated stuff. So I'm going to select both tracks like this. That's right click and drag. It'll actually drag out a window. I found this out, and that was immeasurably helpful for things. And I'm going to, I have these all in a line as to what I like to do with them. So this is always on. This is the toggle, the master that's on the side there that you can't see at the moment, but you can turn that on and off. I don't know why it's still on my bar. I just never deleted it because I always leave that on. This is ripple editing. So if I were to turn this on and select this bit and just delete it, or to do that and then click this and delete it, it's going to move that track and put the two pieces together. So we also have, if you click it again, it's going to do it under all tracks. So if I click here, if I click off of here and hit split, it's going to split both of them. As long as they're not selected, it'll split both of them. And you can select that and just delete it, and it'll delete both of those. So let's go ahead and undo all of that. So that's how the ripple editing works. We're going to turn that off for now because we don't want that going right now. So this is another action that I'm going to use. It's called auto trim and split items. It removes the silences, and I need to select both files. You can do that by holding shift and double clicking on both of them like that, or right click and drag it out. And I'm going to set the threshold that I want to cut at negative 40 decibels. I'm going to leave the hysteresis, I don't know how you say it, so that's up to you, at 0. Ignore silences shorter than 300 milliseconds. Make non-silent clips no shorter than 100 milliseconds. Leading pad 300 milliseconds. Trailing pad 300 milliseconds. Auto adjust snap offset to peak value. Most of this is standard in what it is. And we're going to split and remove the silent areas. So this, when I hit process, it's going to split all of the places that meet this criteria, and then is going to remove them from the tracks. And we're going to preserve the timing of the non-silent areas. Go ahead and turn the music back down a little bit. While that's processing, the other neat thing about OBS that they recently updated is you can auto duck. And what that means is if I go to filters here and you see that I have a compressor on my desktop audio, if I bring it, you see here in the settings, you can do a sidechain ducking source. So I have the mic set up. I found this out through Epos Vox. He has a great tutorial on OBS. I mean, it is the master class of OBS, and most of the things that I learned while watching it, because this is kind of the second time that he's run it, or that he has done kind of a master class on it. This is brand new to OBS, not only adding audio filters, but this sidechain ducking source. So when you set your ducking source here, you can actually, as you are talking, it's going to decrease the volume based on what you put in here. So ratio 10:1. So that means for every 1 decibel above, it's going to crush it down 10. I think is how it works. And then threshold -30. So the loudest point, it's not going to get above -30. And you want to put the release all the way at 1,000 for that. So you don't want to change the output gain. The attack milliseconds, I think, is default 3. I went ahead and put it down to 2. So anyway, that's how the music kind of ducks down a little bit. or whenever I'm talking over top of the podcast when we were listening to it earlier. That is how I got that to drop down automatically. Let's move OBS back out of the way. And so now we can see that all of these, I mean, just hundreds of thousands of little cuts have happened. And you can see that it's removed all of this at the tail end because I'm an idiot. I'm going to suffer for that. I'm going to cry myself to sleep. So now comes kind of the tedious part. And this is probably pretty close to where I'll end this stream. Just because you don't need to see all of this. I'll give you kind of an idea of what I do, and then I'll end the stream, and then I'll go through and just finish editing the podcast. So first things first, what I like to do is I like to find out where we started. Are you cold, buddy? Breakfast, which was at about 1 o'clock today.
Yeah. I don't know if I could actually. I wanted to try to count calories. I have.
Chicken's not too bad. Like the cans. On purpose.
Yeah, I know. I was just letting you know that your thing.
Okay, this is probably where we start. Welcome to episode 140. Thank you for joining. Yep. So all of this right here. All of this, all the way to the beginning, is where we were just sitting around shooting the shit, getting ready for the show. I always start the recording early just so if we have a funny exchange, I can have something to put into the outtakes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on my Ripple editing and I'm going to put it to multi-track. And I'm going to go ahead and just cut this out. So you can see it moved all of that back from 20 minutes all the way down to like 4 minutes. So we're going to bring that down because my intro is about 54 seconds long. So we're just going to drag this around 54 and I'll fine tune it later. And I'm going to go to the end here and I'm going to go ahead and drop in the stuff that I just cut. That way, when I come back to it, I'll be able to edit out whatever funny outtakes, if there are any. Okay, so going into the meat and potatoes, you can actually words are hard. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the Ripple editing again because right now I'm going to insert a template, and this template is the track that is our starting sound. So this is Black Vortex by the McLeod guy. I forget what his first name is. Anyway, you can find it at incompetech.com, the full sound, and all of his stuff is like royalty free as well, as long as you royalty free by attribution, you know. So that's really nice. His stuff has been used in movies and television shows and commercials and all over the place. So really, really, really good stuff. And a really good resource. So I'm going to turn the Ripple editing back on, and I'm going to move this out a little bit because I can already see that it's a little over. And I'm just going to listen, and I'm going to move in, and I'm going to get my timing right. So I'm going to start back out of here. Hello, Ogres, and welcome to episode... So I like to leave just a little bit of beat, let that trail off, and then give it maybe a 2 or 3 count beat. Hello, Ogres, and welcome to episode... So about a 2 to a 3 count beat off of where that music is hitting. That way, when I come in, it's right there. So... 2. Hello, Ogres, and welcome to episode 140. Thank you for joining us, as always, on this fastidious Wednesday evening, Earth date January 24th, 2018. I'm your host, Remington Hitchcock, and with me, as always, my co-host, Brandon Full. Say hello, Brandon. Okay, so now we're into this. You can see that Brandon made a little sound in the background, and this is why it's very nice to have everybody on two separate channels. Because if you have them on two separate channels, if he makes a noise in the background that even comes over, like he was moving his mouth or moving his mic or something in way later, if you remember earlier on, you heard it like a little rustle. I can actually edit that out, which is nice. So to edit that out, I can just hit delete. I can just make sure that I turn off my Ripple editing and hit delete. And I did that. You didn't really see it, but I have hotkeys set up. You can set up hotkeys for all of these. And for my particular one, it'll tell you right here, it's R, where it says Ripple editing all tracks, and then it says R. That's my hotkey. So for this one, I have a hotkey. For pretty much everything, I have a hotkey, except for your template inserts. Custom delete is nice because it removes both stuff and both things and turns on Ripple editing. So that is gone. And while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and delete this because this is just background noise. And you can see where Brandon starts, and there's this little bit of dead space. Well, if I leave that dead space, and number one, he's somewhere else. So there's a certain amount of delay that's going on, right? Between his signal getting to my computer and me hearing it. So there's a little slight delay going on. So I want to cut that delay out, and a lot of people don't even do this sort of thing. You know, for the audio, it's fine. If we were doing video, I'd leave it raw. There's no reason not to. Because you have all this visual stuff, and that takes precedence over the audio in a lot of cases. So you can kind of ignore a certain amount of silence as long as you have something to look at. But when you're in the audio space and you're just listening, the tighter it is, even if it's just by a few milliseconds, usually the more you can keep hold of your audience. So if I put a lot of dead space in between things while we're waiting, people would get bored. Now, it's okay to put a little bit in if you're trying to like sell a joke and there's just this awkward silence. That's cool. But you want to use that kind of thing sparingly. You don't want to do it a whole lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my Ripple editing back on. And I'm just going to grab a hold of this, and I'm just going to move it until it snaps right there. And you can turn on snapping in your options panel. And since I don't have the grid turned on, it just automatically snaps to whatever is going on in that next one. So let's go ahead and start listening back again. Evening, Earth date January 24th, 2018. I'm your host, Remington Hitchcock, and with me, as always, my co-host, Brandon Full. Say hello, Brandon.
Hey, everybody, it's me, Brandon.
Brandon.
Oh.
Whoa.
I'm not sure what that is supposed to be.
I have no idea. So a lot of times, I might come back through and take this stuff out. I might not worry about it. It really depends. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to go ahead and do it. A lot of times, if there's a little bit of overlap, I'll just leave it in if Brandon's talking, because nobody will ever hear it unless you are like listening to it way louder than you need to be. Stuff like this, I just kind of cut out, just drag it out. And this is what I was talking about when I saying stuff like non-destructive. I can drag all of this back in if I wanted to. I can take something out and just drag it back in if I want to. So all of these little spaces, let's say if I delete this entirely, I can just drag it back in. And then no harm, no foul. So I'll go ahead and leave it just like that because, you know, I already did all this work on cutting it, so no reason not to, right? So let's get back into listening. Oh.
I'm not sure what that is supposed to be.
I have no idea. I just I did a bump of Coke before we started, so
yeah,
you know.
and it turns you into what is that comedian's name? I know we've talked about him before.
Comedian?
Yeah, it's not Rip Taylor. It's older than Rip Taylor. Hello there. He was on the dating game all the time. I don't know. We don't need to start with a peck and hunt for who this comedian was, but we've talked about him before. Hello there. He was on the dating game all the time. I don't know. We don't need to start with a peck and hunt for who this comedian was, but we've talked about him before.
So I'm going to go ahead and delete all of this stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this up just a little bit on my end. I had it turned down so it didn't interfere with the microphone as I'm streaming. But I need to be able to hear some of this lower stuff, so. Okay, so that's just me clearing my throat. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that stuff. And Brandon and I run a pretty fast and loose show, which is why I do the editing that I do. You know, we're not always on point. Sometimes we're looking up a story just to fill some time. That happens on occasion. So, like I said, it's pretty fast and loose, and that's why I edit our show. There are a lot of podcasts out there that don't edit their show. They put it out right as it is. And that's okay. I like to have a little bit more control over it than that. So. And just bump that in. Okay, and we'll go back into it.
All the time. I don't know. We don't need to start with a peck and hunt for who this comedian was, but we've talked about him before.
I have no idea. I was thinking a little more Nathan Lane, I guess. On my end, that's where my head went. It was kind of Nathan Laney.
Paul Lind. That's who I was thinking of.
Oh, okay. Paul Lind. Yeah.
A distinctive, campy, and snarky persona that often poked fun at his barely in the closet homosexuality.
Right.
That's from Wikipedia.
Good on you, Wikipedia.
So what have you been up to?
Did you just turn the tables on me, you son of a bitch?
I did.
Who the hell do you think you are?
Brandon Full, table turner. Coming this fall.
To ABC. You're going to be replacing Inhumans.
All of these tables, what are we going to do with them? Leave that to me.
That was a real good lip foley.
Thank you. That was a table being turned, by the way.
Yeah. I have been streaming.
Yes, you have.
I've been streaming. You set me up for this. To ask me what I'm doing.
Yeah, I did.
I see what you did, Brandon. You're not fooling me.
I'm famous. Famously great.
But no, I have been streaming. Ever since we partnered with Humble Bundle, we've been getting access to just random, like, early access. Okay, so here's a little bit right here where I have a good pause going right there, and it's not necessary for it to be there. Ever since we partnered with Humble Bundle, so like this, I can kind of tighten up a little bit. Ever since we partnered with Humble Bundle, we've been getting access to, like there, I took a breath. I don't really need to. It was more me fooling with my thoughts than anything else. So let's go ahead and take it out and see how that sounds. Ever since we partnered with Humble Bundle, we've been getting access to good right there. Random, like, early access and just the ability to get some. I mean, they'll give out freebies to everybody, and now I am more aware of the freebies, because it comes right to my email and I check it all the time.
Yeah.
There's a little sniff that I do there. I'll just take it out. And this is how I kind of do it. I just kind of roll through and pick out just tiny little things. Usually when I get to the stories, let's go ahead and just kind of guess where a story is. It's so few and far between because there's this certain disconnect when it comes to the podcast where not to sniff something out, walk nearby to find a scent. Maybe you walk to your bathroom and you smell soap, or outside. There's a thing that men do where we don't want to acknowledge that things.
Ow.
Yeah. So that's the thing that less that I like the RoboCop franchise. Okay, so here's where we kind of talk about the RoboCop stuff.
And then you sped up, so you were really low and slowed down like you were in a time portal.
And we were having we were having issues all day when we were recording this podcast. So yeah, okay. So this is a coping technique where you
have to. When I left the doctor last. I don't think it was an edit either. I feel it went weird, and then you sped up, so you were really low and slowed down like you were in a time portal, and then you just went really fast, and because you're so monotone, which is how you can tell a human is telling the truth.
That's true.
See, the trade-off for me is I get to go and talk about myself for like half an hour. So. And everything went weird, and then you sped up.
You're gonna say, are we talking original 80s RoboCop?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a good year, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
Do you want to get to our first news story?
Yes.
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Have you ever seen RoboCop?
Okay, so this is kind of where the RoboCop stuff starts. So now I'm gonna first I'm gonna learn how to speak English, and then I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go ahead and drag the marker list over here just so you can kind of see what's going on. And this is where our first story starts. This is where he starts talking about RoboCop. So my hotkey for putting a marker is M, and I can add a marker. I think the default is Control M. If I'm not mistaken, I changed it to just M because whatever M was, I wasn't using. And I'm just going to type in RoboCop dick shoot. And that'll just give me a little reminder. It tells me what the position is, and if I click OK, you can see that it puts it up here at the top, and then it puts it in my marker list. So when I output this marker list, you can actually right-click and export it. And I'll usually export it to the clipboard, but you can actually change the format around on it. So I have MT space D. So the marker time, MT, I could probably just put T. First character, one of a /R/M. So it's only markers. So A is all, R is only regions, and M is only markers. So I'm just doing only markers, and then I'm listing the time of those markers, and then there's a space that it puts in between, and it writes out the description. So if I export that to the clipboard or to a file, it'll type it just like you see right there. So that's how the marker list goes, and like I said, that kind of wraps up where I'm gonna go with this stream. There's not really a whole lot else aside from just watching me edit, and that's not going to be fun for anybody. It's usually not fun for me, so why would it be fun for you? But like I said, I just basically go through and I listen and I'll pull stuff out and I'll just kind of build it out as it goes. And with this particular episode, I'll probably just come in with some after podcast audio and tack it on to the end and say, oops, I screwed up. I lost the last bit of the podcast. That happens sometimes, especially when you're trying to experiment and learn more. You'll make mistakes. I have lost, I think in the few years that we've been doing it, I've lost maybe 6 episodes, either due to quality being garbage and that doesn't even include the episodes that we haven't released. So, where it was a little more on the raw side of things. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up this show. I'll probably be on here in a little bit as well to do some streaming. Brandon and I were thinking of jumping on and playing some Staxel together. So I'm looking forward to that. But until he lets me know that that's a thing that's happening, I am going to just edit on the podcast and make it work. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate it very much. If you have any questions or comments about this about this thing, you can email me at duelingogres@gmail.com, or you can call or text 978 DU-OGRES. That's 978-386-4737. Or you can hit me up on Twitter or Facebook, just Dueling Ogres. We're pretty much everywhere. Send me a DM on Twitch if you want. If you would like to help me speed up my computer, we always have donations. They're always appreciated but never expected. Down in the description below. Or you can support us by going over to Humble Bundle. They're running their winter sale right now. I told you about the free Amnesia already while we were waiting. And all kinds of other bundles that are going on. We get a little bit of kickback if you choose to give it to us, or you can choose to give it all to charity, or some of it to charity, however you want to do it. Either way, I really appreciate anything that you want to do. So it helps out a lot. Even just interacting is really important. So thank you all for watching, tuning in, whether you're watching on Twitch or you are watching on YouTube, because I'll probably put this up to YouTube as well. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, Ogres, keep your clubs blunt and your tusks sharp. Good night.
Prepare yourselves for a battle of epic proportions between two titans. Feast upon their voices and revel in their words. This is Dueling Ogres.